Meeting to order.
This is a
Special call
by the
meeting
fall of
for the
2024.
Metro Audit Committee.
We will use the coordinated entry system and focus on the most vulnerable.
I'll let you explain that, what we're doing this afternoon.
Okay. So the item that we came here for this special call meeting is that at the last meeting, a motion was made for the Community Foundation to cover the cost of an audit by one of our contractors on staff, or on file, or our staff would do the audit if they would not do that. We met with the Community Foundation last week. They're open for us to audit them. They asked which of the firms that we had would be available. Well, we had already reached out to our firms and found that only one of our contractors was able to do it. Two of them have independence issues. The one firm that we have that could do it was Barry Dunn, which is out of Maine. The Community Foundation requested us to possibly use a local firm so that they didn't have to cover the cost of travel expenses when there are local firms here that could do it. It would be a firm of our choosing. And so we wanted to bring that back to you all to see if you were open to that or if we were still going to use a contractor on file. There are some complexities if we don't use a contractor on file. Just trying to get the contract in place and things like that. But we are open to exploring those, but we didn't want to even try and explore anything if the audit committee prefers that we still utilize one that we have on file. So.
What are the complexities?
So we have, Nikki and I were having a discussion today an hour ago trying to figure this out. Basically, if we utilize, at the end of the day, the Community Foundation is giving us something of value by paying for this audit, which we don't have the authority to accept something of value without going through council who would approve that. And so if we utilize Barry Dunn, then the thought would be that we would utilize Barry Dunn, we would cover the cost and then request a grant from the Community Foundation, possibly only covering the amount less travel, because we can cover that out of our budget, requesting a grant that would be approved through a resolution at council. If we do a local firm that we do not already have an established contract for, we have to go through the proper procurement process. And then also it would be almost a three-way contract?
Sure.
Or something like that, because we have to have something in place to protect our audit work papers and the work that we do that we normally have in all of our contracts with audit services. But then also the Community Foundation would also enter into a contract with them to pay them. And then that contract would have to go through an ordinance. Yeah. So it would have to go through 3 readings.
All right. So we have 3 external auditors. Barry Dunn is the only one that would be available to do this, and he does not live here. He lives in Maine. So the problem would be about having to pay for his travel back and forth as many times as that is, and that would be an expense based upon what the audit was doing was placing that on the Community Foundation. They would, I'm guessing they would much rather have somebody, again, that's why we're having this conversation, somebody local so they don't have to pay for the travel, and we would pick the auditor.
It would still be our choice. They've still let us that we could choose it, that they would not have to be any affiliation to the Community Foundation.
But the problem with doing that is that we only have contracts with the 3. So if we were to enter into a contract with another entity, another auditor to do this, we would have to either do it one of 2 ways, I think this is right. We'd either have to go out with some type of RFP to request proposals, is that right? Or if it's a sole source, if we just picked one, would it then have to go to council?
This is professional services, so it doesn't require a formal request for proposal.
Okay.
So it's just maybe a request for qualification, something informal, where it's based on integrity and competence. So where you can select someone that has the ability to provide the services based on the circumstances, the timeliness, the scope, and all that. So it doesn't require a formal RFP.
But if we were to, this goes back to Councilmember Toombs, the whole question about, okay, what is this? If we were to pick Company A, they were an auditor, everybody was comfortable, and we go, let's let them do it. We're going to contract with them to do it.
Who makes that?
If it's not, the issue is that generally procurement is involved in the selection of the auditor. It's professional services, but generally they'll issue a request for qualifications so that those that have the requisite qualifications can express their interest, and they will be interviewed or they'll submit information that reflects their competence to provide the services, the professional services. And in this case, so that's one aspect, and then there'll need to be a contract between Metro, CFMT, and the firm, because the contract needs to reflect the scope of the audit and who is going to be paying for it. And because Metro is not going to be paying for it, we'll need to go to council to authorize really the receipt of this benefit, since the audit committee doesn't really have independent authority to accept grants, whether they be in kind or cash.
3 readings.
Yes, sir.
So, my first thought is the reason why we are here is because there has been question about the use of funds. So for them now to say that they're not going to use one of our companies because they are not local, because they may incur additional expenses, when the way they've been spending money has been the question from the beginning, seems to be kind of like oxymoron, maybe, or hypocritical, or questionable to me, because they're trying to prove that they have done things right, in order, and above board. We don't know how much the cost is going to be for the other external person, which could very be comparable to the cost of what we would use in a Metro contracted vendor, along with the travel expenses that it may take. I think that we offered them, as we did, because we did not want them to have any influence on the vendor that is chosen and that they're paying for, because as it was intimated the last time, if they pay for them, then they may influence what actually is said. So this is our offer. We have one of our contractors who's willing to do it, can do it, and if it's going to cost you an additional $5,000, so be it.
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated that we're all here for all the reasons you just said. And if the Barry Dunn proposal had come back at estimated cost of $25,000 versus saying $22,500 and $2,500 of travel expenses, would we even be here? Like, I don't understand kind of why we're here.
Right.
We did want to bring this back to you only because...
No, I get why you had to bring it back. I just don't understand why the foundation didn't just pay it and move on.
Right.
And I mean, we also have John Cooper here, who is their legal person, if there are questions that he can answer related to any of that as well. But
Can we recognize Mr. Cooper?
Please.
Thank you. John Cooper with the Waller Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of the Community Foundation. First, thank you for coming. I understand the problem of coming downtown on an afternoon, short notice, so thank you for being here. Just to address a couple of points, we are completely here in the spirit of cooperation. We think we have very strong legal arguments that we're not subject to a Metro audit, but we don't want to go down that road. I mean, the Community Foundation has had a partnership with Metro for decades, and on many different projects, including disaster relief. And this is more about our integrity and the integrity of the process. So we're happy to comply with the audit. We felt like having a local firm with experience in nonprofit auditing was preferable to, or would be preferable to Metro. The expenses are part of it, but also because of the focus of the firm and what they do. So that was one issue, and the fact that there was only one that was available, so we just wanted to give some more options. We didn't know about this procurement issue until about 10 minutes ago, so we haven't really thought through that process. But just by way of background, I just want to make sure everybody's clear on exactly what happened and what we're talking about. This was all private funding. The Community Foundation did not receive any government funds and did not receive any administrative or funds or reimbursement for expenses. So it was all passed through. No money went to the Community Foundation. The primary issue is this MOU that I'm sure you've discussed. The MOU has a trigger provision, and that OEM, Office of Emergency Management, is to activate the Community Foundation in the event of a disaster if they want their participation. That was not done on 2 of the 3 disasters in question. This was just the Community Foundation acting on its own, soliciting funds on its own, and addressing the need. So it wasn't, those 2 weren't even in partnership with Metro. Those were done on their own initiative. But that being said, we fully welcome the audit, and we want to cooperate. We were just thinking that a local firm with no ties to us that has experience auditing local nonprofits would be preferable, but obviously we'll leave it to your discretion. What we would ask is that the motion be amended to authorize the internal auditor to either select a firm of her choosing or to handle it in-house, as was discussed.
Other questions, discussion?
I would say this. I mean, obviously there's interest in this review from a number of different sources and places. I think it's important to get this moving. It's one of those things where there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of talk. At some point, this needs to happen, and I think everybody's okay with going ahead with an audit. I worry that by the time procurement gets their hands on this, with all due respect to procurement, and it goes through the council for 3 readings, it'll be next July before we get this thing done. And Mr. Cooper, I think, wants to say something.
I failed to mention that it's very important to us that we get this done quickly for a couple reasons. One, there's a lot going on in December for a closeout that will take their time and resources. And on top of that, they're preparing to move offices. So during the month of December, they're going to be, it's going to be hard to access documents. Things are going to be in transition and being packed, and so they would prefer that it be done before December. So yes, they're happy to move as quickly as possible.
Is that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is a point of clarification or maybe full disclosure. So I was over an organization, this is all prior to me becoming a member of the audit committee, that received funding for from the Community Foundation. So I don't know if it's appropriate, but I just wanted to make sure that I was offering full disclosure that my organizations did.
We did this last time. I head of an organization that didn't get any, I don't believe got any tornado relief, but does deal with the Community Foundation. But in terms of trying to deal with it from Metro's standpoint, we're trying to figure out what happened. I think we have a responsibility as the metropolitan government, particularly whether anything was triggered or not. There was a lot of people from metropolitan government asking that money be sent to the Community Foundation. That's pretty clear. And so we asked people to, if they were going to donate to something that was important, to give it to the Community Foundation. Now we want to go back and figure out, did it go to where it was supposed to? We just want to be right in this. I know there was a lot of not-for-profits that got the money, and want to make sure that when they got it, there were parameters on what, because that's what it was supposed to be there for. So I know a lot of people are anxious or interested in this. Again, I want to see this move ahead. I don't know for purposes of this meeting. I mean, we sort of gave it. We said the external auditors. I'm a little worried that again, because we only have one that fits into that parameter, or if that doesn't work, then we're sending our Metro internal auditors in, which is always another option. If there's some way to do this quicker, after, I mean, I know you've been looking at this today. I would have thought you would have had the complete answer by now.
The three, I know Crossland.
No, Crossland's our external auditors. Craft CPAs, but that is their external. It's the Community Foundation's external auditor. EY, or Ernst & Young, but when we reached out to them, they said that there were independence issues that they felt conflicted them and they couldn't do the work. And then Barry Dunn is our third one.
And the payment structure is that Metro pays and then gets reimbursed from the Community Foundation in the form of a grant?
That is one way that's kind of what the discussions for trying to figure out how this would be structured started today, as we started to actually think through trying to answer questions of how would you select a vendor and all this other stuff, and that's when we started going down the path of who is this contract really with and how are we all protected. If it's only a two-party contract, we have to be all protected, so that makes it a little more complex.
So you said that Craft CPAs is there. So have they audited them?
They have done the external audit, so they've done their financial statements, which is very different from an actual internal audit where you're looking at not.
So could they actually do the auditing of these funds, and then you all basically do a review of the audit?
We did not reach out to them with that option. I guess we started down the path of Kraft does their financial statements as well as their 990 forms, which for independence purposes there's independence in fact and appearance. And in fact, they may be able to put safeguards in place, but in appearance, they are not going to appear independent.
Right.
And they would also, they're under contract with the Community Foundation. We would have to make sure that we had something structured so that we still had access to records and everything. So it would still have to be kind of going down the path of almost setting up a new contract with them to try and make sure that we're on the same page.
And I think the independence issues are something that need to be considered.
Exactly. Well, I don't think we have any other choice but to go with Barry Dunn. Wouldn't you think so, Kelly?
Yeah.
So let me just ask one question, because you may be right.
I usually am.
Thank you, Finance Director. So the only question would be if there is some other way, which we just hadn't had a chance to think through, where we could actually get a local auditor that we were all comfortable with. But I would say that if it's going to have to go through this very convoluted process to get an auditor, and it's going to be the first of next year, I really don't want to do that either. But I just haven't had it. I don't know if they've had enough of a chance to make sure that there is no other way that we can go ahead and find somebody.
So I'm in charge of procurement, and I think there's a little bit of a misnomer on how procurement functions. They are administrators, of things, but somebody needs to own it. So procurement's not going to select the vendors. They're going to help you come up with an RFQ, but somebody, and I don't know if it is you guys or if it's us, have to actually draft that, do the solicitations, the same way we do for the external auditor. And then, you guys actually have, the separate external audit review committee, interviews those people. And I'm guessing it would be a similar process, and it would be long.
I'd let you draft it because you're always correct.
So I can't, that's the fun part of my job. I'm in charge of the procurement appeals board, so I can't actually engage in procurement.
So do you have any vendors for Metro who are local CPAs, auditors?
We explored that. We spoke with the head of procurement, Michelle Lane, and she was saying that she could try to pull a list for us. I don't think she's had enough time to do that, as well as we started thinking through maybe the state, because there are state contracts that we piggyback off sometimes. We started trying to go down that path. I couldn't find any, at least online, but I haven't had a chance to reach out to them to see if there's any we could piggyback off of that, potentially. I will say that if there's other CPAs that are on contract, they're not going to have the same audit clauses, so we would have to go through most likely a contract amendment of some sort that wouldn't take as long, but at least that we could explore that. So that kind of gets back to, if we do change the motion to broaden it to any one of our choosing, we can explore these options, but if we keep it as it is, we have to go with Barry Dunn or in-house. That's the way it is.
I was just going to say, Art, I feel like we're rushing really fast, and it may be okay. I mean, I wouldn't mind giving them a couple more days just to check. But after a certain date, if there is nothing else, then I think we've already made it clear what we want to do. I just want to make sure that we haven't missed anything, and we haven't really given them a lot of time to check.
And Lauren, you also mentioned Metro covering the cost of the travel, and Community Foundations covering the remaining cost.
Now, that was going to be another question for you all, and as Councilmember Hurt pointed out, if y'all decide that it is all or nothing, then that is your choice. That was kind of, if we want to go down the path of still having one of our contractors do it, and make the concession that we'll pay for the travel, that would be up to y'all. But it sounds like that's not the path that may be taken.
And right now, we don't know if we were to identify another local firm, what their fee structure would even be.
We don't.
Where it would even be in terms of being competitive with Barry.
Exactly.
Whether the travel costs are even an issue at that point.
Yeah, and then also, as we were discussing earlier today, our contract, the fee structure is from 5 years ago, so it is most likely some of the lower rates that you're going to find today. So what we may be in travel expenses may actually be more expensive for somebody local because we don't have the same fee structure.
Right. Exactly. So to my initial point, do I need to make it as an emotion?
I don't think you have to make any motion if we're going to leave it alone. The question is, do we amend the motion just to give them a couple more days to look? But then would you have to call us back?
No. If you
I mean,
if you amended it to say any firm of our choosing, we're not going to explore all these other options if it's going to be a waste of our time. We wanted to put it out there as an option to you all, but if you said to stick with the current motion, we wouldn't go down seeing if there's other CPA firms in Metro. We wouldn't look at state or anything else. We would stick with it as it is. We would still probably have to do the resolution to accept the grant to cover the cost, but it wouldn't be any more meetings to discuss.
how much time, if we decided to do it, how much time do you need?
I mean, like you said, a couple of days, we could probably figure this out. We could probably at least look down, get some lists pulled to see if Metro has any other things. Now, we would still have to reach out to those firms because other firms, even if Metro has them on file, like if we reached out to Crossland might say we have conflict because we do Metro's financial statements and we can't do that. So it's just, I would say a few days, maybe a week.
Let me ask you one other question. So, Barry Dunn may be located in Maine, but does he do work here for us?
Yes.
Okay. Does he have roots here in the sense?
No, it's not a guy. It's a whole farm. It's actually quite a large farm.
No, either.
It's quite a large farm, actually.
So it's a firm.
Yes.
I thought so.
Yes, it's a large firm. It's quite a large firm. They do a lot of government audit. They've also have worked. They've done a lot of our ITS work. They've done a lot of ITS work. They've done work for water services.
I know Barry. He's a friend of mine. Okay, so Barry Dunn is a firm, and do they have an office
They
here?
do not have an office here. Many of their employees are remote. Their headquarters is up in Maine, but they've got people all over. I don't think they have any necessarily. The team we work with is not located in Nashville. Their DBE on the contract is located in Nashville, and that is who they would actually have to do a lot of the work.
All right, so besides the
Would
fact...
be possibly Hoskins and Associates.
It is not because they declined to be on that contract. It's KBMD, which Dawit has done a lot of work for us on different projects, even throughout Metro, so he is familiar with Metro, but he is who their DB is.
Oh, okay.
I think Kraft is the only one that has Hoskins.
Okay.
I guess going back to something that Mr. Cooper said, so there are a lot of not-for-profits that are involved in this.
Right.
So is this going to be? That's why I was checking about the local routes, was having to figure out who all these players are. Because if they're not local, they may not know who all these different organizations, and that may take them a while to figure out if they're going to have to track them down. So that's one benefit of actually having a local group, whether it's an individual or a firm.
But didn't she just say that they have a local?
No, they don't have a local office. They have a local DBE.
Right, the local DBE. So they would probably get the DBE who's local to handle it.
And that may answer part of the question. If they have somebody on the ground here who's local who can help them through that, that's fine as well.
The other side of that issue, though, is depending upon how far this web spreads in terms of nonprofits, you may have independence issues with any local firm.
Well, that's true, too.
We've not reached out to KBMD to see if they have any independence issues, since we weren't sure which way we would go. So there is the potential for that, but then at the same time, Barry Dunn has an obligation to utilize a DBE on their projects, and so they might, at that time, explore adding a different one to their contract if needed.
Are y'all looking up Barry Dunn on your phone to see what they look like?
They have an office in Puerto Rico,
Do we need to go talk to them there?
Maybe we can fly to Puerto Rico and vet it.
Do they have a DBE there?
They do have a lot of specialists. When they did our investigation. I would say they did our investigation for General Hospital, which they utilized some of their specialists in hospital billing. Yes. So they do have, when we do specialized projects, though we might work with the same team, they will add in specialists depending on what we're looking at. If it's hospitals, they're going to add in somebody with hospital billing to review some of the work. I would assume nonprofits would be the exact same way.
I have this, based upon what you said, Mr. Chairman, and just listening to this whole conversation, there are going to be conflicts everywhere, I think. But I'm willing to let you all take a look for a couple of days, and then if nothing happens, then we're where we are. I understand that, but based upon the nature of this, it may be that Barry Dunn, the firm, may be the only entity that might be able to do this without conflicts. proposed the motion that we give you, how many days? You want to do it until next Tuesday? Do you want a little bit of time?
Well, what are you expecting back from this?
Probably two things. Okay. I'll hold my motion for a second. Give legal counsel enough time to work with procurement and just make sure we haven't missed anything. Okay? And I don't think we have, because I think we probably know what that's going to mean. But then the second thing is there is the piggyback provision, which you've already been looking at, and you haven't found anything yet. But the piggyback provision is we jump on a contract that we either with the state or with some other governmental entity that has a contract with an auditor that we could piggyback onto, and then I don't know exactly how many readings that would take. It may be just one. I don't know.
If we piggyback, there's no
piggyback.
Except, the only thing will be the resolution approving the funds.
Okay.
Since Metro is not paying for this, Metro,
Okay.
resolution approving the grant, that's all we'll take.
So that's what, I just want you all to have enough time just to check so we haven't missed anything. But then if you find an auditor, you're going to have to contact them and go, is there a conflict? And there might just be one. But just giving you a couple more days to check, and then if nothing pans out, we're right back where we started from. So that's my motion. Okay. Did that make any sense? So what I'm trying to do is give them until the close of business Tuesday.
Okay. Is there the intent to have another meeting, or is it just?
Look, I'm probably not even going to get a second. I'm just so a couple more days until the last and then we could, if there is nothing, we're just giving you a couple more days to check. Okay. If there is nothing, then we're back on the original motion. If there is something, then you're going to call a meeting and we're going to come back here and listen to you.
Or do we give her the
authority
to move forward with that?
Well, I'm happy to give you the authority to do that too, because I don't really want to come back here.
If there's a state contract to piggyback on.
So when did you make the ask for?
I would ask that you amend it to say.
No, I'm saying, when did you make the ask of the state and?
I have not asked the state yet. Procurement.
But
She and I spoke. She and I spoke yesterday.
Okay.
So it was just, and then she was going to actually ask people higher than her to see if they had any ideas as well.
There's somebody higher than her.
Well, not higher than the finance director, but higher than the procurement officer, who's the head of procurement.
Well, I don't know how to expedite either, other than piggybacking.
So I think Lauren has heard the discussion. I think give her office a week to see if there's another viable option. If there isn't, she knows to go with Barry Dunn. If there is, I trust her discretion to choose the best option.
I like that motion better than mine, and I never really got mine out. So I second what Councilmember Toombs just said. But did you say that in a motion?
I move what I just said.
And I second that. Okay.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm going with Kim.
Well, you have a question?
She's always.
We just passed a motion while you were all talking.
Yeah, I just have a question, because the motion was one for legal counsel to work with procurement, and two, to explore whether there are piggyback opportunities with the state available, and then to give the auditor, Metropolitan Auditor, the discretion to choose
If there's more viable.
To choose the vendor that's used.
If there's more
To select
viable
an
options.
auditor.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so it can actually be beyond just the state piggybacking,
Yeah.
just other options. Okay, that's good.
Get Ms. Riley.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Are you going to need to get quotes on funding to determine that? Because I think it's key that you say that Barry Dunn is working under a contract that was created 5 years ago, which means that we could very well be spending more money going with someone else. just
Yeah.
because they are in 2022 inflation rates.
Isn't it the community foundation that ultimately is going to pay for this?
Yes.
Right, but I'm saying that's the whole point.
Right.
Is that to make it more frugal, perhaps, or the best.
We'll follow up on your question. Okay, so
Offer.
so you look at Barry Dunn, and then the travel cost involved is the firm's rate, and then the travel cost, and then you compare it to Company A that turns out to be on a piggyback list somehow, and their rate is like a lot higher than what Barry Dunn, the firm's rate is.
Right.
And so you go
Including
back
travel.
to the community foundation and go, okay, we found somebody, but it's going to be a lot more than what you would have been paying if you just stuck with this.
Right. So
Who makes the call?
my thing is this, is that I'm trying to limit the amount of work that our internal auditors have to do. That's the reason why I thought you're getting the best deal possible by going with Barry Dunn, because we already know that they're operating at 5-year-old prices.
Yeah. Can I say something? I just want to make the general statement that it's not supposed to be based on price, selection of professional services. So let me just put that.
Because we didn't want to pay travel.
I mean, it's not, it's not based on this person charges $5 an hour and this person charges $10 an hour. It's supposed to be based on competence and integrity. So I just want to, just put that out there.
Well, I would think all of them would do their work based on competency and integrity. Anyone that we work with, and not, that's a given as far as I'm concerned. But again, we wouldn't be here if they were not objecting to having to pay travel cost.
All right, so Mr. Cooper is,
I guess we already
where are you
got
going
a
to
motion
see?
passed.
So can we hear from him again?
We already got a motion passed, don't we?
Yeah, we've already got a motion
Is that a
passed.
point of order that we just
Well, he still wants to say something. Are you okay listening to him? We've already passed the motion. It's over. Good.
I just wanted to clarify that it's not about the cost of the travel. That was just one little part of it. It was really about their desire to have a local firm doing the audit. That, to the community foundation, that was important to them.
So the question would be, if we do find a local firm, and it's a lot more money, but that's who we found one, good?
I think that's a discussion that we can have with the auditor at that point and make a decision. I mean, obviously, they don't want to spend money unnecessarily. And if there is a local DBE, there's a lot of new information that I've learned in the last hour, and so that may be fine. I don't know. I'll just have to talk to him.
Lauren will make a wise decision.
So we've got a motion, seconded, and passed.
And passed. Yeah, we're good. So I move. Anything else from you guys?
Yeah, you move that we stop discussing.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We adjourn right now.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Lauren. Have fun.
I don't know if I'm glad I called.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.